Hi, I'm Dana, and I've been living with HIV for 33 years. Oh, I have a little bit of a long story, but I'll try to shorten it a little bit. I was a person who injected drugs, and this is how I became HIV positive, by sharing a syringe with a friend. And it was probably within a year, I got really sick and didn't know what it was. Called an ambulance, and when I got to the hospital, they pretty much already knew from my symptoms I had endocarditis, which is an infection in my heart. And they figured that I probably was HIV positive because that was really the height of the epidemic. And so they asked me if I would consent in writing to take a test. And so I did, but back then, the results didn't come back for a very long time. And I spent a couple of months from Thanksgiving through Christmas, my birthday, Christmas Eve, and New Year's in the hospital with 3 different antibiotics and still injecting heroin in the hospital through my IV line. And that was probably the worst that my addiction had gotten. But it also was the most stable I had been in a long time because I was in the hospital for 2 months. And after that, they released me because the infection was cleared up. But nobody ever talked about what I was doing. Nobody's talked about the fact that I might need help for my addiction. And so they released me from the hospital with what I always call the finger wag, because that's what they did. They wagged their finger and said, "You better stop doing what you're doing or you're gonna die." But not one person ever gave me a suggestion of what I could do. So I was released from the hospital and I went back to doing what I was doing. And about a month later, brought back to the same hospital, the same floor, the same bed, with the same diagnosis. And they had told me, "You're not going to live through this endocarditis a second time." Well, apparently I did. And when I came back to the hospital, my results were waiting for me from my HIV test. And by the time I tested positive, I also had an AIDS diagnosis. Again, I was treated, and when the infection cleared, they wagged their finger at me again and said, "Stop doing what you're doing or you're gonna die." And I think at that time, I was thinking, does that really matter? Where I was in my life, not that I actively wanted to kill myself or hurt myself. And all I could think about are my daughters, and that they deserved a mother who could get better and come back home. So eventually I did manage to get help. It was not really through the medical team, the hospital, the social workers, but I was able to get to treatment. And I went through residential treatment in 1997 and then started, when I was in the hospital that last time, they gave me a pill and said, "We have this, that's all we have right now for HIV." And it was AZT, and it did not go with me. It did not. I was literally dying. And I knew that I was already getting better from the infection, so it had to be this pill. And I told the nurse when she came around with it again that I can't take it. I'm dying. She said, but the doctor said you have to. And I remember there was a moment where I was lying in bed, and all of a sudden I was looking down. It was the strangest thing. It's the only thing that I could think of that someone would feel when they're dying, is that I watched myself in the hospital bed. And I was like, wait a minute, something's wrong here. And I stopped taking the pill. And they were very upset with me for doing that. But I started to come back to life. I'm still very grateful that that one pill was around, because it's how we got to where we are with amazing medications today. So eventually, through the criminal justice system, I got to treatment, and I graduated from the treatment program, and I could be in my children's life again. And so I knew that there was some reason that I lived when all these amazing people were dying, these talented people, and everyone was dying, and why am I alive? I said, there's got to be a reason. And so I thought that I lived because I'm supposed to do something with this situation. And that's when I knew I had to give back in a way that many people at the time didn't feel comfortable because of the stigma of HIV. But I was past stigma. I mean, I was already stigmatized from my addiction, and I knew that I had a story to tell, and I can help folks who are not HIV positive, and folks who are newly diagnosed with HIV, and folks who have been diagnosed with HIV and just are isolating. And so I've been telling my story ever since, because I really feel that that was my purpose, that I lived because I'm supposed to use my experiences to help somebody else. And now my children are grown adults, and just enjoying as much time as I can with them as grown adults. They have their own lives, but it feels good. So I try not to have regrets. I don't think they're healthy. Obviously, if I didn't ever have to be out of their life for a period of time to take care of mine, I wouldn't have been. But that's what happened, and I had to move on and to be the best person I could be for myself first. Because if I'm okay, my children will be okay. So now I've been working in the field of HIV for 28 years for the same organization, and still living out my purpose and showing up every day to see what life has to offer.